Aeloria appeared beside him, her luminous eyes warm. You see now? You were fired from a life too small for you. Because you stopped for an old woman, the universe opened. He laughed through tears. So I lost a job and found the stars. She smiled. Greater plans, Ethan. Always greater plans. And from that day forward, Ethan Crane was no longer just a man from Earth. He was a guardian of the verge, a wanderer of worlds, a reminder across galaxies that even the smallest kindness could ignite a revolution. Ethan couldn't sleep the night after the battle with the Dominion scouts. The alien stars outside his quarters flickered strangely, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. He sat on the edge of the bed provided to him, though bed was a loose word for a crystalline slab that hummed faintly with warmth, and turned the events over in his mind. Only a week ago, he'd been a man with nothing special about him. A man who worked a job he didn't love, who lived in an apartment with walls thin enough to hear his neighbors fight through, who carried his father's old watch but little else. Now he was in another galaxy, a strange alien woman insisting that he was some kind of fulcrum in a cosmic struggle. It didn't make sense. None of it did. And yet, when he had stood before generals and warriors from a dozen species, when he had told them to fight not with hatred but with compassion, they had listened. He didn't know why. A soft chime rattled his chamber. The door slid open with a whisper of energy. A figure ducked inside. Tyrak, the insectoid soldier he had saved days earlier. Tyrak's glossy black carapace reflected the light, his wings twitching faintly behind him. You do not sleep, Tyrak buzzed, his mandibles clicking. Ethan shook his head. Too much going on upstairs. He tapped his temple. The alien tilted his head. You doubt. But doubt is not weakness. It is the mark of one who cares what is right. Ethan gave a half smile. Funny. Where I come from, doubt usually just gets you yelled at by your boss. Tyrak clicked in what Ethan had learned was laughter. Your world must be strange. You don't know the half of it, Ethan muttered. The insectoid warrior moved closer, placing a clawed hand on Ethan's shoulder. It should have been frightening, but Ethan felt only reassurance. You saved me. You gave me chance to fight again. If you ask, I follow. Always. Something tightened in Ethan's chest. For the first time, he realized he wasn't alone. Over the weeks that followed, Ethan trained. He learned to pilot skimmers that darted across the surface of methane seas. He studied star charts so vast they made Earth's solar system look like a grain of sand. He sparred with warriors who could bend steel with their bare hands and debated philosophers whose lifespans measured in centuries. But Aeloria never asked him to become like them. She never demanded strength he didn't have or brilliance he couldn't summon. Instead, she watched how he listened, how he asked questions, how he noticed when others faltered. Your gift is not what you wield, she told him one evening, her luminous form casting long shadows. It is how you see others. That is rarer than power. Still, the weight of expectation pressed on him. When he walked through the corridors of the Verge Citadel, aliens turned their heads. When he spoke, they listened. And in the dark hours of night, he feared failing them all. Then the hollow dominion struck again. A fleet of black ships emerged from a tear in space, descending upon the Verge's outer colonies. Where they passed, silence followed. No signals, no survivors, only worlds drained to husks. Reports flooded the Citadel. Panic spread. The Council of Leaders convened, their voices rising in anger and fear. Strategies clashed: strike back, retreat, fortify. Ethan stood among them, silent, until Aeloria's gaze fell on him. Speak, she said. He swallowed. I'm not a general. I don't know the right moves in a war like this. Perhaps not, she said. But what do you see? Ethan looked around the chamber at beings of every shape and form, their eyes filled with fear. He thought of his old job, of Grant barking orders, of how fear had kept everyone's heads down. He thought of the old alien woman he had helped, and how a simple act of kindness had rippled into something far greater. I see people who are terrified, he said slowly. I see leaders too scared of losing to imagine winning. The Dominion feeds on that fear. If we fight them with it, we'll lose. A silence settled. He continued, his voice steadier now. When I was a kid, my father used to say something. He said, when you're in the dark, the only way through is to be the light for someone else. Maybe that's all we can do. Be the light. Remind each other what we're fighting for. Some scoffed. Others nodded. But Aeloria's smile told him it was enough. The next battles tested them all. Ethan traveled with strike teams, not to command, but to remind. He carried no great weapon, only a standard pulse pistol and a stubborn refusal to give up. Yet time after time, his presence tipped the balance. When Tyrak nearly fell to despair after losing half his squad, Ethan sat with him through the night, speaking softly until the insectoid's wings lifted again in hope. When a crystalline child panicked at the thought of her planet falling, Ethan held her hands and promised they would fight for her home. When soldiers argued in rage, he reminded them of their shared purpose. The Dominion didn't understand this. They expected enemies to break apart, to turn on one another. They couldn't grasp why a fragile human with no special powers could hold them together. But Aeloria understood, and she never let Ethan forget it. The final battle came sooner than expected. Scouts reported that the Dominion's vast core fleet had gathered, aiming directly for the Nexus Gate. The gate was more than a structure. It was the heartbeat of the Verge, the link holding countless worlds together. If it fell, the Verge would collapse into isolation, easy prey for the Dominion to consume one by one. The Council prepared desperate plans. Sacrifice fleets. Last stands. Doomsday weapons. Ethan listened, heart pounding, until at last he stood. "What if we tried something else?" he asked. Eyes turned. Voices demanded answers. Ethan took a breath. They feed on emptiness, on despair, on silence. What if instead of giving them that, we give them everything they can't stand? Connection, life, hope, not just with weapons, but with ourselves. Confusion rippled, then understanding. The plan was mad. It was impossible. And yet, in the end, they agreed. When the Dominion fleet descended, a black tide blotting out the stars, the Verge answered not with fire alone, but with unity. Ships linked their energy cores, broadcasting across the void not just signals, but memories. Soldiers shared their victories, their laughter, their grief. Families sent songs. Children painted images of their homes and fed them into the gate's pulse. Ethan stood at the heart of it, his father's old watch ticking faintly on his wrist. He closed his eyes and poured everything he had into the stream. Not battle strategy, not tactics, but the moment he had stopped to help an old alien woman on a rainy street. A moment so small it should have meant nothing, and yet it had changed everything. Ethan Crane had always been the kind of man who stopped to help. It wasn't something he thought about, it was just how he was wired. If someone dropped a wallet, he chased them down. If a stranger looked lost, he offered directions. And if an old lady stumbled on the street, he didn't hesitate to catch her before she fell. That last act was the one that changed everything. It was raining on a Tuesday, the kind of cold drizzle that seeped into your clothes and made every errand feel heavier. Ethan was late returning from his lunch break at Halverson Robotics, the tech firm where he worked on assembly line quality control. His supervisor, a sharp-nosed man named Grant, had already warned him twice that week about time discipline. Ethan jogged across the slick street, clutching his sandwich wrapper, when he saw her. An old woman, frail and bent, struggling with a walking stick. Her silver-gray skin glistened oddly under the rain, almost as if it were porous stone rather than flesh. She slipped on the curb, arms flailing. Without thinking, Ethan rushed forward, grabbing her before she collapsed onto the wet pavement. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, steadying her. Her eyes met his, large, luminous, with pupils that shimmered like shifting galaxies. For a heartbeat, he forgot to breathe. She wasn't human. Not entirely. The city was used to aliens by now, of course. After the treaties, after the quiet colonization deals and interstellar migration programs, beings from other worlds had become part of Earth's backdrop. Most were ignored, treated like tourists or immigrants. Still, seeing one this close, vulnerable and old, stirred something protective in Ethan. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling, resonant in a way that seemed to hum through his bones. Not many stop. He helped her to a bench, offering his jacket against the rain. "It's nothing. You'd do the same for me." Her lips curled in a strange smile. Perhaps. Few would wager on that. By the time he got back to work, he was 10 minutes late. Grant was waiting. "Crane," the man barked, clipboard in hand. "That's it. You're done. Out." Ethan blinked. "What?" "I was helping someone. I don't care if you were saving kittens from a flood. Rules are rules. We need reliability, not excuses." The termination paperwork was shoved at him before he could argue. Just like that, his job, his steady, if uninspiring, paycheck was gone. That night, he sat in his tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't angry exactly, more hollow. He had no savings worth mentioning, no family nearby, no plan. He replayed the scene with the old alien woman. Her eyes, deep and starry, lingered in his mind. The next day, a knock rattled his door. When he opened it, the same old woman stood there, her cane glowing faintly, her posture straighter than he remembered. "You lost something because of me," she said without preamble. "I am sorry." Ethan rubbed his face. "You don't need to apologize. It was my boss's choice." "Even so," she said, tilting her head, "the universe balances. Always. Will you walk with me?" Despite his confusion, he followed. Something about her presence compelled trust. She led him through winding alleys until they reached the abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city. Hidden behind a rusted gate was a chamber pulsing with light, humming softly like a living heart. "This is where I dwell," she said. "And where you begin." He stared. "Begin what?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "Your true path." The chamber shifted as if alive, walls unfolding into corridors of stars. Ethan staggered, gripping the railing. The woman, no, not a woman, not anymore, rose straighter, her form unfurling. Her hunched frame expanded into a tall, elegant being with crystalline veins running through her skin, her cane dissolving into a staff of pure energy. "I am Aeloria," she said, "guardian of the liminal gateways. I have watched humanity from afar, waiting for one who acts with compassion without expectation. You stopped for me when others did not. For that, you are chosen." Ethan's laugh was hollow. "Chosen for what? I'm no hero. I just lost my job flipping switches on a conveyor belt." Her gaze pierced him. "The smallest choices ripple across galaxies. A hand extended, a kindness given. These shape destinies. You are proof of this truth." Before he could reply, the chamber dissolved into stars, and he found himself standing on the surface of another world. The sky burned orange, 3 moons casting shadows across jagged cliffs. Alien ships floated in the atmosphere, sleek and vast. He gasped. "What is this place?" "The fractured verge," Aeloria said. "A nexus between worlds. You are here because forces greater than you seek balance, and you must decide whether to serve that balance or let it crumble." From that moment, Ethan's life became a whirlwind. He was thrust into training alongside beings from other star systems, warriors, scholars, and mystics. Though unskilled in combat, Ethan's quick thinking and empathy won him allies. He learned to navigate starships, to understand alien cultures, to decipher ancient symbols that pulsed with living light. Yet more than knowledge, what set him apart was his humanity, his stubborn insistence on helping even when others saw no profit in it. He saved a wounded insectoid soldier from drowning in methane seas. He comforted a crystalline child whose body fractured under stress. He questioned leaders who sought to exploit weaker races. Every time, Aeloria's words echoed in him. The universe balances. But darkness loomed. The Verge was under siege by a force known only as the Hollow Dominion, a vast, parasitic intelligence consuming entire worlds, leaving behind husks. Their ships were black voids, their weapons silence itself. Every battle was desperate. Ethan found himself at the heart of it, not because he was the strongest, but because others rallied around his stubborn belief that even against hopeless odds, compassion mattered. One night, after a battle that nearly tore apart the Verge's central world, Aeloria came to him. "You are the fulcrum," she said quietly. "The Dominion feeds on despair. Your refusal to yield hope is what blinds them." He shook his head. "I'm nobody. I was fired for being late. How am I supposed to fight something like that?" "By being who you are," she said simply. "By helping. Always." The final battle came when the Dominion launched a full assault on the Nexus Gate, the structure binding all Verge worlds together. If it fell, countless galaxies would be devoured. Commanders argued strategy. Generals prepared sacrifices. Ethan stood before them and spoke. "What if instead of meeting them with fear, we meet them with connection?" he asked. "They feed on emptiness, so let's give them fullness. Unity, life, hope." It sounded naive, even foolish. But one by one, beings across the Verge agreed. Ships linked not just weapons, but energy signatures, broadcasting memories, songs, acts of kindness, moments of love. A wave of shared compassion rippled through the gate. When the Dominion struck, it recoiled. The darkness fractured, howling against the flood of connection. For the first time, it faltered. And in that opening, the Verge forces pushed back, driving the parasite beyond the rift. Silence followed. Then, a chorus of voices rose. Alien, human, crystalline, insectoid, all celebrating together. The Verge was saved. Ethan stood at the center, overwhelmed. He hadn't fired a shot. He hadn't commanded armies. All he had done was what he'd always done, help where he could. The wave struck the Dominion like fire against ice. For the first time, the endless silence cracked. Ships faltered. The black tide writhed in confusion, unable to swallow what it could not understand. The Verge forces pressed the advantage, driving the Dominion back through the rift from which it had come. When the last void ship shattered, a cheer rose across the stars. Ethan fell to his knees, trembling. He wasn't sure if he was laughing or crying. Around him, beings of every kind celebrated. Tyrak's wings buzzed triumphantly. The crystalline child clung to his leg. Voices shouted his name. Aeloria appeared beside him, radiant. You see now, Ethan Crane. You lost a job too small for you because the universe needed you elsewhere. You helped one old woman, and through that, you saved worlds. He wiped his face, grinning through tears. All because I was late for work. Because you were kind, she corrected softly. And kindness shapes the stars. From that day forward, Ethan was no longer just a man who had once been fired for being late. He was the guardian of the Verge, the human whose stubborn compassion had turned the tide against the Dominion. He traveled between worlds, a living reminder that even the smallest act of care could ripple outward into galaxies. And sometimes, when the nights were quiet and the stars shimmered just so, he thought of his father's words. Be the light. He had never understood them fully until now. The universe had greater plans, and he had finally stepped into them.